Before sunrise, metal doors start rattling upward in a hot storage lot. Bidders stand back at the threshold, and an entire interrupted life can sell in under 60 seconds. That is the seduction of storage unit auctions. From the doorway, one dresser, 3 plastic totes, and an old bicycle can look like buried profit or pure landfill. Television turned that tension into treasure hunting, but the real money is usually made by people who think like liquidators, haulers, and ruthless downside estimators rather than gamblers. So this story is not about fantasy jackpots first. It is about how the auctions really work, why amateurs lose, where the hidden costs bleed them dry, and why pros still show up. Then we will walk through 4 case studies, from a negative $137 loss, all the way to one of the most extreme cash-safe stories ever reported. Start with the mechanics, because the business only makes sense once you understand why a facility is selling someone's stored property at all. When a renter stops paying, the storage operator does not instantly seize and flip the contents. The facility usually has to follow a lien process, governed by state law. That normally means repeated notices, a waiting period, and time for the renter to cure the debt before any sale can happen. Only after that process can the contents be sold, and in many places the auctions now happen online, although in-person sales still exist and keep the old doorway drama alive. The buyer is usually not bidding on one chest of drawers or one visible tool case. The buyer is bidding on the entire contents of the unit as a single lot. Inspection is deliberately limited. In many auctions, you get a visual read only from the doorway. Boxes stay closed, drawers stay shut, and touching. The contents is forbidden before bidding. That limited inspection is the whole game, because a pile of taped cartons can mean organized value, worthless clothing, water-damaged paper, or months of dumping fees. Winning bidders usually have to pay immediately, sometimes with cash or certified funds depending on the facility, so hesitation after the hammer falls does not save you. Then the clock starts. Buyers are commonly given roughly 24 to 48 hours to empty the unit and return the space. That means every bad purchase comes with urgent labor. You cannot leave the bad sofa there while you think. You are paying with truck time, fuel, sweat, and disposal fees almost immediately. There are also legal and ethical limits after the win. Personal records, family photos, IDs, tax papers, and similar material often have to be returned to the facility rather than resold. Vehicles create another trap for beginners. A car or motorcycle inside a unit does not automatically mean easy ownership, because title problems can turn the vehicle into a parts-only headache. So why do units sometimes sell for $50, $100, or $500? When they visibly contain somebody's entire household? Because the facility is not trying to maximize the sentimental or retail value of the tenant's possessions. It is trying to recover unpaid rent, fees, and possession of the space. That is why ugly-looking units can go cheap, especially when the visible contents seem dirty, badly packed, hard to move, or dominated by furniture nobody wants. Prices rise fast when the front row signals categories with proven resale value. Tools, recent electronics, mid-century furniture, sealed boxes from a good neighborhood, musical gear, or serious contractor equipment. Good buyers learn to read these clues in seconds because the auctioneer talks fast and the nods that win the unit can be tiny. What are they hoping to find? The classic dream list includes antiques, vintage furniture, jewelry hidden in drawers, tools, generators, comics, sports cars, vinyl, militaria, designer bags, and usable household furniture. They also look for media collections, framed art, sealed goods, branded clothing, sneakers, recent consumer electronics, and small appliances that can be tested and sold locally the same week. But the typical reality is far less glamorous. Particle board furniture with no market, stained mattresses that cost money to dump, broken televisions, obsolete electronics, and water-damaged boxes. Add personal papers, bulk low-value clothing, chipped cookware, and random household clutter that consumes truck space faster than it produces cash, and the fantasy begins to collapse. That gap between visible promise and actual salvage value is why the business is harder than it looks from the outside. The real model is not treasure hunting. It is low-margin liquidation work mixed with occasional outlier wins that get all the attention. The people who last are not merely lucky. They are fast appraisers, disciplined movers, efficient sorters, and sellers who know where every category should go after the truck is loaded. They clear one pile for flea markets, another for local classifieds, another for antique malls, another for consignment, another for online marketplaces, and another straight to scrap or recycling yards. That sorting discipline matters because value is not created only at purchase. Value is created again when a buyer knows which outlet matches which object with the least time friction. Amateurs usually underestimate the costs sitting between purchase and payday, and those costs are the difference between a television-style score and a quietly bad week. Truck rental or trailer ownership costs money, fuel costs money, dump fees cost money, cleaning supplies cost money, testing, repairs, platform fees, and shipping losses all cost money too. Even your own unpaid labor is a cost, because 6 hours spent hauling. Ruined upholstery is 6 hours not spent on a better unit, a quicker flip, or another source of income. Then there is storage for items that do not move immediately, which means a buyer can end up paying to warehouse the leftovers from a unit they already paid to buy. That is why experienced bidders think in full all-in cost, not in the fantasy number they might gross if every single visible object sells perfectly. Now look at case study 1, because it is ordinary, painful, and extremely representative. The purchase price was $175. Visible from the front were plastic totes, a love seat, a lamp, 2 end tables, and black trash bags that suggested a whole apartment in storage. Inside, the reality was low-end clothing, damaged cookware, chipped laminate furniture, and one working microwave that barely rescued the pile from total worthlessness. Gross resale looked like this: $25 for the microwave, $40 for the lamp and tables, $35 for a usable clothing bundle, and $20 for scrap and odds and ends. That put total gross revenue at $120, already below the purchase price before the buyer had even counted the cleanout costs. Add $18 in truck fuel, $55 in dump fees, and $9 in cleaning supplies and replacement bulbs, and total cost reached about $257. The net result was roughly negative $137, which means the buyer paid for the look of volume and inherited mostly disposal work. That one loss captures a central truth of the business. A unit can feel full and still be economically empty. Case study 2 shows the kind of modest working class win that actually keeps professionals alive in this field. The purchase price was $300, and the visible clues were far better: metal shelving, toolboxes, lawn equipment, and sealed moving cartons. Inside were a working miter saw, hand tools, 2 decent bookshelves, a retro stereo receiver, and unopened household goods that could be sold across multiple channels. Gross resale broke down to about $420 for tools and the saw, $140 for the receiver, $120 for the bookshelves, and $210 for sealed goods and miscellany. Add $60 from scrap and leftover bundles, and total gross reached about $950. Costs still mattered. The bid was $300, gas $22, a helper for one afternoon $80, dump fees $35, and selling fees plus incidentals $63. Total cost therefore came to about $500, leaving a net of around $450. That is not a fairy tale jackpot. It is exactly the kind of predictable, unglamorous unit that makes the business viable when repeated efficiently. Case study 3 is where specialized knowledge changes everything. A New Jersey teenager named Michael Haskell was widely reported to have bought a Brooklyn storage unit for $450 and found works attributed to Man Ray and Walt Kuhn. The reported sale value ran to nearly $50,000, and while public reporting did not fully break out the final post-commission net, the spread after authentication was enormous. The key lesson is not that art appears everywhere. The lesson is that misidentified paper, ephemera, framed work, and archives can produce extraordinary upside when the buyer knows when to stop guessing and start authenticating. A reckless buyer sees odd paper and dusty frames. A better buyer sees the possibility of a specialist, an auction house, and a category where one box can beat 10 sofas. Case study 4 is the famous safe story that keeps dreamers coming back. A buyer reportedly paid $500 for a storage unit in Southern California and found a safe containing about $7.5 million in cash. The original owners reportedly offered to buy back the contents, and the final reported payout to the buyer was about $1.2 million. That is one of the most extreme storage auction returns ever widely reported, and it proves jackpots are real while proving almost nothing about the normal economics of the trade. You cannot build a business around expecting a $7.5 million safe any more than a fisherman can build a fleet around one mythic catch. So what do realistic margins look like? There is no clean national data set because the buyer base is fragmented across small operators, flippers. In everyday practice, many units lose money or merely break even, and the better units often produce a few $100s in net profit rather than life-changing wealth. That is why many experienced buyers think in multiples, not miracles. If probable resale does not look at least roughly double the full all-in cost, many of them pass. A gross number can deceive you quickly. A unit that looks like $950 in resale can shrink toward $400 or $500 net. Once hauling, landfill, labor, and selling friction are counted properly, the business rewards turnover more than beauty. 10 OK units flipped efficiently can outperform one dreamer waiting months for a mythical score. To do that, buyers train themselves to read tells in seconds. Quality of containers matters. Sturdy matching bins often suggest organized ownership, while random collapsing trash bags can signal chaos, contamination, or low-end goods packed without care. Cleanliness and dryness of the front row matter too. A mildew smell, visible moisture, or warped cardboard can mean the most valuable categories are already compromised. Furniture type matters. Solid wood beats pressed board. Instrument cases, contractor boxes, display fixtures, and labeled archives can hint at specialized value or professional-grade contents. Facility and neighborhood quality also shape expectations, because a well-kept property in a stronger area may contain better goods even before a box is opened. Packing style matters more than beginners think. Careful wrapping can imply ownership habits consistent with higher value items, while cheap discount furniture up front can be a warning flag. On the risk side, mattresses visible at the front, loose trash bags, heavy mildew, and obvious low-end household spillover often predict labor and landfill more than profit. This business is also harder now than television made it look, and the reasons are structural. Online auctions widen the bidder pool, so casual buyers from outside the old local circle can now overpay from their phones while imagining every unit hides gold. Good categories are easier to price check instantly, which means true pricing mistakes get corrected faster than they once did. At the same time, disposal costs rose, labor costs rose, and bulky furniture became harder to move as flea markets and antique malls filled up with similar inventory. So why do some buyers still do very well? Because they specialize rather than fantasize. One buyer knows mid-century furniture, another knows tools, another knows estate jewelry. Another understands paper collectibles, militaria, or the thresholds where a dusty receiver becomes serious money. They also know when to call a specialist, when a repair is worth doing, when shipping will erase the margin, and when one sealed archive box is more promising than an entire room of sofas.